Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
On the sixth day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 6 geese a laying, 5 gold rings.
You know you want to sing.
Oh, Carol's singing right now.
You know, my husband, like, it's just, he's like, no, not yet. We got to get through Thanksgiving. You cannot put the Christmas music on yet.
I will tell
Makes
you.
him crazy.
It does seem a little early to be talking about this.
It's never too early.
It's never too early. That's what Amanda Agati would say. Because you know the 12 days of Christmas. 12 drummers drumming, 10 lords a leaping, 8 maids a milking, 5 golden rings, a partridge in a pear tree. I kind of went out of order there on purpose. I don't want people to get the song stuck in their head.
They cost a lot to pull that together.
It does cost a lot.
I know.
That's exactly why we're talking about it. Because if you're a regular viewer or listener of our program, then you know that each year at about this time, we talk to Amanda Agati over at PNC Asset Management Group because for more than 40 years, they've been keeping track of just how much the 12 days of Christmas costs. Amanda is Chief Investment Officer at PNC Asset Management Group. She joins us from Philadelphia. Amanda, I'm just going to go out and say it because I was shocked to see it. The PNC CPI rose 5.4%. That was more than last year's increase. It was higher than the CPI October year-over-year reading of 2.6% from the BLS. When I heard this on our planning call, you can ask anyone on our call, I said, it has to be the gold rings.
Did.
It's got to be the gold rings. Then I look at the note. It's not the gold rings. Gold is up 30% from a year ago, but that's not at all what contributed to this increase. What's going on here?
Well, it's always nice to be with you to talk Christmas price index. And by the way, Thanksgiving is a week later, so I'm in full-on Christmas mode, despite still waiting for my turkey dinner
Nice.
later this week. But yes, the Christmas price index is up really significantly. And thankfully, my favorite gift in the index, the golden rings, of course, is not the driver, as you said. It's really the services side of the equation, which we equate very much to the performers. That's really what's driving this year's calculation in terms of the Christmas price index. And also interesting, very much still a lot of services inflationary fire in the broader economy too. So the numbers may look eye-popping, but the trends are actually quite similar.
But I don't understand the gold element here because gold is up 30% from a year ago. But in your analysis, it's exactly flat from a year ago.
It's not just purely about the cost of the gold itself. It's the production and the creation of the ring. And so every year we go back to the same jewelry store and talk to them about their prices, and they have not raised prices on a year-over-year basis. So their margin is certainly coming down because the input cost has gone up, as you said, but they haven't moved the needle in terms of the price for the ring in total itself. And that's a nuance, but notable, I think.
So wait, the trends remind me over the years as we have talked to you about this, as we are a service-led economy, has it increasingly been that the service side of the 12 days of Christmas is what kind of moves the needle when it comes to costs?
You know, it hasn't always been the case, but as the broader economy has shifted from goods to more services, we've actually seen a similar trend. The Christmas price index isn't leading it necessarily, but we are seeing that shift in the underlying data and the calculation of the index. And so when you look at the performers in particular, I mean, think about it, the Taylor Swift effect, the Beyonce effect, we're going to pay anything to get our hands on those tickets. And so the performers in the index are really garnering their big fair share of increases on a year-over-year basis.
See, and I was thinking the 12 Ladies Dancing or was it 11, 10 Lords of Leaping? 10 Lords of Leaping?
10 Lords of Leaping.
You know, they were doing backup work, for Taylor Swift, so like could have driven up the cost that way.
6 geese a laying.
One way or another, the cost is way up, and consumers will pay anything for services these days.
What's up with these 6 geese a laying, up 8.9% from a year ago? I thought poultry prices were flat or down.
It's sort of an interesting dynamic there. I have to say, the backyard farming trend, dare I say farm to table. Hopefully the geese aren't listening to me here talking to you about that. Wow, that's harsh. I know it is, isn't it?
Yikes.
These are the cold, hard analytical facts for you. Yeah. But there are definitely some consumer-oriented trends driving the demand for geese up relative to some of the other birds in the index. I mean, what are you going to do with turtle doves? What are you going to do with calling birds? They're not the greatest of gifts, but geese, well, I could get used to that.
You got to clean up after some of these gifts, which is never something that
Birds are messy, man.
was encouraged in my home.
And they fly like you can.
You know?
Where it's never.
Yeah, I
encouraged.
mean, at
Never
the end of the
encouraged,
day,
yeah.
I'm not sure what true love is really thinking, buying all of these birds here, but nevertheless, we're not going to deviate from the classic holiday song. So this is what you get.
Well, this is what happened. You know, we like to buy experiences these days, but they were more interested in things back then, Carol.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, I had a sister who's always like giving experiences, which I always thought was a kind of a cool thing. But I do think about that, right? Experiences versus stuff. I wonder, the 8 Maids of Milking, is it raw milk? Is it?
Wow.
Are they getting?
She's got to get political
Are they
here.
getting political at all?
Oh boy, I'm
'cause
going to plead the fifth on that one.
That could be a different cost equation. I'm just going to point that out.
It could be very different, agreed. The underlying data as it relates to the maids of milking really ties very much to the minimum wage.
Okay.
And because the minimum wage hasn't changed at all in many, many years, that one has been holding pretty steady. We could talk all day long about, the philosophical aspects of, wages and the minimum wage and where we are from an inflationary perspective. But until the minimum wage moves, from a policy perspective, that one unfortunately is holding steady.
We said the cost of all gifts crossed the $200,000 threshold for the first time last year. Today settles at 3.6% higher at $209,272. Help me understand, does this say to you, though, in general, that we are living in a little bit of an inflationary environment? Like, what does it tell you about, if we step back, about what it means in terms of the U.S. inflation picture?
Well, I think we're certainly living in an elevated inflationary environment. I mean, we're gaining on it relative to the peak of, 9% in terms of CPI that we saw sort of in the depths of the pandemic trends that we saw there. But we haven't seen prices come down. We're not in a deflationary environment. It's really just that the rate of change on inflation is slowing. And so we are seeing some elements of the Christmas price index slowing in terms of that rate of change increase, but nevertheless, things are on balance more expensive this year than they were last year, and it's just a reflection of the traditional economy as well.
Yes, Carol Massar?
What's up with the partridge in a pear tree? I mean, partridge unchanged, but my understanding is a 17.1% jump in the price for a pear tree.
That's the traditional buying. That's not the internet buying. Okay, that's the brick and mortar.
That's absolutely right. Last
Is that
year
fair?
we
Can I get some backup here, Amanda Agati?
Yes, absolutely. Last year we were teasing that we were going to make the partridge sit on a cardboard cutout because the tree was so darn expensive to try and control for prices. We should be saying the same thing this year. But the reality with the tree is we use that as a proxy for housing costs. And even though mortgage rates are moderating in the wake of some of the Fed policy actions we've seen these last few months, demand for housing continues to be really, really strong. We're net short housing supply in this country, so house prices are really elevated, certainly just like they were last year.
So if you want to buy the entire cost of the Christmas song, if you buy it the traditional way, $209,000, up 3.6% from last year. If you want to buy it online, close to $250,000. The rate of change for inflation was lower on the internet, but more expensive overall.
Can I use Klarna to do this?
You can buy now, pay later. Yeah, you can buy now, pay later.
Which would be another sign in terms of how the economy is doing.
Amanda Agati over at PNC. Always fun when you join us, even if it is during the month of November. And we're already not even to Thanksgiving yet, but talking about Christmas. Couple days, I know.
Did you see the decorations up around town?
I did. The trees are out.
It's happening. This is Bloomberg.
Well, I got some numbers for you that are a little disturbing, I think many people would say. Last year, about 13.5% of households in the U.S., it's about 18 million, were what's considered food insecure. This is according to the USDA. It defines food insecurity as, quote, at times during the year, these households were uncertain of having or unable to acquire enough food to meet the needs of all their members because they had insufficient money or other resources for food. The picture's actually worse for households with children. Nearly 18% are affected by food insecurity.
Yeah, I think about all the stories and the reality of people, kids going to school to actually get a meal. So it's definitely troubling.
It's something that Claire Fontenot is all too familiar with. She's CEO of Feeding America. It's the U.S.-based nonprofit that has a network of more than 200 food banks. Last year, Feeding America distributed more than 5 billion meals. Claire joins us from New Orleans. Claire, good to have you with us this afternoon. We spoke a lot about the difficulties that Americans faced during the pandemic. What I haven't heard is an update about food insecurity post-pandemic and where we are relative to where we were then.
Wow. Well, first, let me say thank you. Thriving communities are certainly great for business, and no community can thrive when its members don't have enough to eat. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to your audience about this. Unfortunately, things are worse. I know that might be difficult for any of us to wrap our heads around, but it's true. Food insecurity rates were lower during the peak of the pandemic than they are today. They're at their highest rates since the 2008-2009 economic downturn.
Why is that?
Well, in part because food insecurity captured the attention of the American public and policymakers during the pandemic. People saw those very long lines of cars on the road, or saw parking lots filled with 10,000 cars, each car representing 4 to 5 families, and it got our attention. And when we are intent on something, we tend to do something about it. So a lot of resources were directed toward food insecurity during that time. Since then, the lines have simply returned to the insides of buildings, but I think people think they've gone away. That makes opportunities like this one all the more important for the people that I sign up to serve every day.
Claire, why, though, are people hungry in America? We're a rich nation. And I guess I wonder why that exists still.
Yeah, so that's a really complex question with complex answers and nuanced answers. But I will tell you one thing as an example. The largest or the fastest growing population of people who are showing up at food banks are people who do not currently qualify for any federal nutrition programs. So SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, they can't get SNAP. We have systems in the country that simply don't work well. They don't think about how each could relate to each other and how sometimes they perpetuate people staying down. We talk about it a lot. It's sometimes characterized, for instance, as benefits cliffs, where it happens all the time throughout the country that a person might get a $1 an hour raise and lose all of their child care benefits, or put away an extra $100 in the bank, and now they no longer qualify for their housing.
Right.
So it's a combination of things, and I'm hopeful that the Trump administration is going to sit down and bring in all of the different parts of the government, bring them together, and have them work together to come up with some effective solutions.
We talk about margins a lot here, certainly when it comes to like an earnings or balance sheet on a company, but I just think about the slim margin or no margin that so many American families are trying to exist or, and live on. And it's just too fragile. We're going to continue the conversation. I feel like a timely one as we all get ready to sit down with family for Thanksgiving dinner. It's often considered a feast of many proportions, but we know that that's not the case across America. We're going to come back with Claire Fontenot. She is CEO of Feeding America, joining us on this Tuesday.
I want to get right back to Claire Fontenot. She's the CEO of Feeding America. It's a nonprofit based here in the U.S. They've got a network of more than 200 food banks. Last year, they distributed more than 5 billion meals. Claire joins us once again from New Orleans. Claire, I was thinking as I was preparing for this segment, I mentioned USDA data at the top. About 13.5% of households in the U.S., 18 million homes were food insecure in 2023. This data come from the USDA's Economic Research Service. And I was thinking to myself, is this how valuable this information is, because it gives us sort of a place to start our conversation with you, but also it's important to people like you because it gives you a baseline of how to understand food insecurity in this country. We also know that the incoming Trump administration wants to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. I'm wondering if you think programs such as these, important economic research service data, or other programs at the USDA are at risk as a result of the new administration incoming.
Well, I certainly hope not. And I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. What I can say is that Feeding America's Network has been successful in working with every administration since our inception. We worked with the Trump administration during trade mitigation, for instance, that incredibly nutritious food that was being produced by U.S. farmers, growers, and producers. So much of it was actually sent into the charitable food system where people received more access to nutrition than they ever have. We have worked vigilantly as a network to make certain that we maintain a status of being nonpartisan, not bipartisan, which I say reduces you to the lowest common denominator, but nonpartisan. We stand with people experiencing hunger. They tell us what they need. And when we get them what they need, communities thrive. When communities thrive, businesses thrive, the whole country thrives. And it's simply not possible for people if they don't have enough food at home. It has a negative impact on everything that we value. And when they get what they need, it has a positive impact on everything that we value. So we're hopeful that we're going to continue to be able to get people to work across whatever those divides are that we've created between us, and work with us as we work in communities across the country.
So Claire, I think it's pretty honorable what you guys are doing and have been doing for years. Personally, I'd like to put you out of business, and I would love to see no American go hungry. So tell me, what is the root cause of why Americans are hungry in America today? Is it, and help me fill out the picture here. Is it people that you are providing assistance for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Are they often getting assistance for a long time? Is it because they can't get a job that pays? Is it because they're a mom with kids and raising young kids? Like, what is it? Why do we go hungry in America today?
Yeah, it's all of the above. So there are a group of people who come to us and it's just episodic. They had a big medical expense that they had difficulty addressing, and we're there to be helpful in that moment of crisis. There are others who have come to us because they're in college. I, for instance, was food insecure when I was in college. I had to turn to the very system that I'm so privileged that I get the chance to help lead. And for me, it was during a period of transition when I was working really hard to create a different kind of path for myself. My parents hadn't had the chance to graduate high school, and here I was in college, and I wanted to make good, and I just couldn't make ends meet. So there was a lot of college hunger in the country, and there also is generational hunger in this country. People who turn to us every year and who have for many generations turned to the charitable food system. We've asked them, so what is it that puts you in that line? And they've been answering. We file a report every year in September, which is Hunger Action Month. It's called Elevating Voices to End Hunger Together. And it's where people experiencing hunger tell us why they're in the line. So here's what they tell us. They say it's because of things like housing that's not affordable, is because they don't have access to great health care and they care about their health. It's because of things like the benefits cliff, which I alluded to in the earlier segment, where when they start getting ahead, the system actually pulls them backwards. So it's a lot of things. And we, as Feeding America, we know that to solve hunger, we can't simply food bank our way out of it. So like you, we want to put ourselves out of business. And the way to do it is to be comprehensive and thoughtful and nonpartisan and do what's best for the whole country by lifting people up who are experiencing hunger.
Claire, Carol and I were talking just a few moments ago and sort of asking the question of supporting a charity such as yours versus working closer to our own communities. How do you communicate that to people, supporting Feeding America versus supporting a food bank in your hometown?
What's so beautiful is there is no versus. Feeding America is a national infrastructure but it is an intensely local organization. Those food banks are in local communities. If anyone listening and watching were to go to feedingamerica.org, all that you'd have to do is type in the zip code for the community you care about the most, and there is a member of the Feeding America network that's serving that very community. Having a national infrastructure allows us to have a lens, a pulse, if you will, on where the greatest needs are, where the hot spots are. We provide funding to food banks and pantries. Again, there are over 60,000 agency partners for Feeding America. Some of them are big, some are medium-sized, and some of them are little bitty church pantries throughout the country, especially in rural America, where without those church pantries, there's so many people who would be devastated because of the implications of hunger. So with Feeding America, you don't have to make a choice. Choose local. That's what we want you to do. We want you to support your local community. And what we do as a national organization is put you in the best position to be able to do that.
All right. So appreciate getting some time with you as we get ready for the holiday season. And we know it'll be a season that is going to be tough for a lot of Americans. So appreciate checking in with you. Claire, happy holidays and nice to talk with you again. Claire Babineau-Fontenot, CEO of Feeding America, joining us there in New Orleans.
I was just looking for my local zip code, 2 food pantries that are not at all affiliated. Like they don't have Feeding America branding at all.
But are they affiliated?
Yes, City Harvest is one of them. Very prominent one here in New York City. Probably
makes sense. I was looking at the list of partners. It's a who's who of those in the food industry. And so they probably work together in filling that out. All right, you're listening and watching Bloomberg.